The Independent Daughter is one of those posts that I stumbled upon online. When I read through it, I knew this was going to be one that would provoke some thoughts. It reads, "Everyone sees her as strong because she never asks for help and always handles everything on her own. But what they don't see is how heavy it feels when she is by herself. How many nights she cries quietly so no one will notice. She hides her pain because she doesn't want to be a burden. Yet, deep inside, she wishes someone would check on her, someone who cares enough to notice the cracks behind her smile. She is the daughter who wipes her own tears, comforts herself in silence, and keeps showing up like nothing is wrong. And yes, she is the independent daughter they never worry about." This one is a little difficult because pretty much the entire basis of my channel revolves around my personality. And one of the things that I can tell you shaped most of my personality is how I was, as they describe, a little bit of an invisible child. And I say a little bit only because my mom was present. She would take care of me and provide things for me. But there were some areas where my mom had blind spots. And I didn't understand that until I went on this journey about objectively reviewing my past and why some things in my present are the way they are. And I would have never guessed that was the case unless I embarked on this journey. And some areas of it were easier than others. And anytime I would try to describe my innermost thoughts, the deepest of all thoughts, embracing what some things truly meant for me as I was experiencing it, until I did that, I couldn't come to any of these realizations or any of these conclusions. Had I read this in the past, maybe some 10 years ago, I would have been like, maybe 50-50, I can see some of it, but I wouldn't have been able to see some things. I'm going to take it piece by piece and take it from there. Everyone sees you as strong because you never ask for help and you handle everything on your own. And that sucks. I hate that I am that way. And I have described to you guys before, especially last year when my mom had her car accident, that I feel like I was bred to be an assistant. Like I can be there to resolve others' matters. I am sought after for ideas, suggestions, advice, and all that. But when I think about it, I have to actively go out of my way to open the door to others to become mentor figures in my life, because I feel like no one is really taking that initiative about checking up on me. And I wouldn't necessarily blame the individual people for this. I think that in this era where independence is what's promoted the most and pushed for the most, sometimes I get the feeling that other people feel they can't tell me things or suggest things, even though they are the people I would want to hear things from, because they don't want to interfere with the "you're grown, I can't tell you what to do." And I think that is a very erroneous way to go about things, because I think that even as an adult, your parents should still continue to influence you, as long as they are a parent that's capable and qualified to have such an effect on you. Because let's face it, unfortunately, some kids will sometimes outpace their parents at a very early age because their parents lack maturity. But I really think when you present yourself as strong all the time, because it is the expectation of you, and that is the precedent you're establishing for yourself, it becomes a trap very quickly, because you automatically assume that the mantle you are wearing is one of you are your own higher superior authority and nothing else. Therefore, whatever your personal inevitable shortcomings are, you just accept them. And that's the part that I can say I'm still struggling with to a certain extent in the present. Never asking for help. I try not to, but I have been more open to asking for help, because especially when I follow my gut at determining who I want to ask and why, it's been nothing but rewarding experiences. And the only time I can say that asking for help was not efficient, it was when I would ask an authority that wasn't responsive. For instance, that's why I would never consider asking my father for help, even if he could or wanted to help. I just assume that he won't, because I have more experiences of him not serving, not delivering, more than doing so. Therefore, why waste my time? And yeah, I often mention here, I become aware of this every time I review a video to edit it, that I really am and feel like I'm by myself, even though I'm not supposed to feel that way. And I think what makes me feel that way is, like I have said before, the areas that I have deficiencies in are not being served. They're not being addressed. Those needs are not being met. And until I have those areas fulfilled, I will continue to feel this way, because that is the truth. And in the past, I used to deny these feelings because I was living in denial of those feelings and their consequences, but especially the root of it. I ended up suffering a lot because I was living a lie. Like, I was trying to put people in positions of not having responsibility when they were supposed to have responsibility. And I would say that one of those would be my mom. There were some areas that I just have to accept that she either had a blind spot or she lacked responsiveness, and it ended up affecting me. I lived for a long time shielding her and protecting her in my mind from everything. I just looked at it as there's no way she could be doing any wrong, considering that she meant me no harm and she has taken care of me more than not. But the truth is the truth. Deficiencies come in different ways, shapes, forms, sizes, sources, and you just have to accept it. And the sooner you accept it, the better. My only regret is I didn't accept this way earlier in the game. I don't think my outcome would have been that different, but at least when it comes to the weight in my mind, it would have made a difference. I have gotten to the point where I will cry, of course. I'll cry in the shower. I will cry in my bed. And sometimes I will cry when there are other people present. But I try to make it to where I don't have an audience. It's like I'll be in some room, or I'll be in my room, or I'll be in some office that I know only authorized people will go there. By authorized, I mean people who I am comfortable with observing me in an affected state. But outside of that, the rest of the world, they really wouldn't have any idea that I'm going through things. And sometimes I may allow I don't want to call it a mask because I'm not necessarily fake about it, but sometimes I will let some of those emotions show, like in the form of me having a little bit of an angry energy going on, like everything gets done, but it may not be as calmly and gently. I feel like when I'm angry or sad about something, or especially frustrated, my performance at home and at work, although my energy becomes a little aggressive, it becomes more accurate because I feel like I'm activating a survival mode. And when you're acting in survival mode, maybe the way that you grasp things is with a little bit more authority, a little bit more dominance. When you throw something, you're less likely to miss your shot because you have more strength put into it. When you calculate something, it's more precise and even faster because that adrenaline is what's taking over. And while I don't like the sensation and the consequences of operating under that body setup, I don't mind it because I feel like I have superpowers for the duration of it. But I also acknowledge that that lasting long term is not healthy. And there was a season in my life in which I went some 6 months living like that, like I was in survival mode, just continuously in feral mode. And I noticed that my sleep was different, my eating habits were different, My energy was there, but because it was there 24 hours a day, it was disrupting other areas of my life. I also felt the weight of it in my character, in my personality. I wasn't smiling as much. I wasn't enjoying the activities that I would normally enjoy. My tone changed. It got deeper, more serious, more firm. My body became, I don't want to say stiffer because I can still move the same way, but I had a rigid appearance to me. And I didn't like that. And that's when I realized that that is the consequence of me being brought up to be an assistant. I had a little bit of a military style kind of, I guess, upbringing. And I don't like that because it makes me feel robotic sometimes. It's hard to break from because it's the life I have known, it's the reality I have known. Even if I benefit from calming that down and enjoying much better how it feels to not be in that mode, perpetually being in that mode is what I have known the most. And of course, I'm at a point where, as someone who seeks stability, I'm going to stick to what I know. And unfortunately, that is a mode that I'm very familiar with. And I feel like that's where I'm at home, even if it's not a home where I'm at ease. And you guys, I did get to experience some 2.5, 3 years ago, someone who just upon getting to know me a little bit better, I guess they happened to have the skill of being good readers of people. They could read me from a mile away. And because the person was a person that I was fine with, that I was comfortable with, that I was good friends with, that didn't bother me in the slightest. Because sometimes when someone who I'm not tight with is starting to evaluate me deeply and they pick up on some stuff about me, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable because I haven't authorized this person to cross that boundary. And sometimes I let it die. I'm not exactly trying to hide or anything, but it's just that just because the person is reading me correctly, it doesn't mean that I'm willing or open to discuss that. I like to establish the boundary, like I just said, but I also love it when someone who I think I'm developing a good connection with is reading me correctly. And then that's when I drop my guard and I open the door to crossing that boundary. And I can describe that as a very rewarding experience. It's a matter of waiting because I'm not the kind of person who, because I'm eager and desperate to have a connection like that, the first person who gives me the slightest indication that they can do this and they get me, I'm gonna pretty much make myself bare to them. No, 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 no. This is a whole process, and I'm happy with the way it happens. I remember when that person was very present in my life, even when we'd go long times without communicating and we could just bounce back to the way things were. That was the happiest I had been for a while up until that point because I truly felt like I had found a home. And having a taste of that confirmed for me, that is what I'm looking for. Nothing sweeter than you not trying to inconvenience somebody because you really genuinely try to be considerate, but that person is so open that because I observed someone being so open and willing to jump in and supply support, even to the point that I got a lot of financial help too during a time I needed it, that helped me liberate myself from some of my own chains. My chains in which I'm like, I'm only willing to get involved so much. This one taught me how to become that person too in other people's lives. And a recent example I can give of that is my boyfriend had to be out of town for 4 days, more like 3 days, but it consumed 4 days of the week. All of a sudden, I found myself with an extra car. And there's someone at work who I'm kind of close with. And I say kind of because we're not checking in on each other every day. But when we do talk, it is a deep, meaningful relationship. And she doesn't have a car. And immediately, when I heard that my boyfriend was going to be gone and he was getting a rental, I thought, I know exactly where my car is going to go. So the next day, I saw my coworker friend and I was like, hey, just to give you a heads up, I know you're short of a vehicle. Well, all of a sudden I have two and I'm only one and I have an extra, is what I'm saying. How would you like to have my car? And at first, she was saying that she has everything covered because she's been relying on delivery services and stuff, which is great. But I looked at it as, well, even if it doesn't feel too bad, if you would like to pocket that money and if you would like to get a sense of independence for 2 days, then let me know. Just so you know, the offer is there because they can't go anywhere because I'm only one person. And then that same evening, I surrendered the custody of my vehicle temporarily to her. And let me tell you, for me, doing that, that was a big deal. The fact that I had that idea and the fact that I had that impulse and I acted on that impulse, but also seeing how it meant a lot for this person and it helped me bond with this person differently. I like that experience because let me tell you, had this happened maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I doubt I would have been as open and willing to do this because immediately I would have had my thoughts invaded by the cloud of negativity of, well, if a disaster happens during this, say there's an accident or anything like that, am I ready to deal with that? Am I willing to cope with that? Am I going to accept it? And when I would replay a scenario like that in my mind, I said, well, first of all, I'm handing it to a person I trust, a person who has a good record of taking care of stuff. In addition, even if that did happen, let me try to imagine that. How would I feel today instantly? And when I imagined that scenario, I was very chill, very calm. And that's when I knew that I had it under control. And I kept thinking, if I get a message or a call that something happened, I'm ready to act on it. I had that information ready, accessible, everything prepared. And in my gut, I knew that everything would be okay. But I said, in the event it isn't, I'm prepared to reconfigure my mind to react to that mess. And everything worked out. And I said, bingo, that is what I wanted. I want to get to the point where I do things out of faith. And if something happens to where it adds a complication to my life, I will address it one thing at a time. And that's it. Nothing happened. We all reaped the reward. Everybody went home. Everybody's happy. And I'm glad because sometimes for me, when I think about my valuables, it's not that I'm not willing to share. It's just that I am aware that there's a degree of risk associated with that. And I'm not a very good risk taker. If I'm going to take a risk, it better be worth it and one that I know guarantees will give me returns. And to me, that meant a lot to have done something like that because, again, I understand how others trust me, but I don't often get to say that I can very confidently trust others. But I'm working on it. I can tell you that much. The one about showing up like nothing is wrong, I can summarize it with what they call functional depression, which is no matter what, I understand what my duties are, what my responsibilities are. I will always respond to them, but I hate that I respond to them like I'm a machine, like I'm a robot. That's what I'm programmed to do. Sometimes I wish that I could become irresponsible so that maybe I can get attention, even if it's negative, like I have seen others respond to others whose performance begins to decline. Like I have described before, nobody is looking for flaws on the straight A student. And there's a part of me that's like, I need to just stop being a straight A adult, but not to the point where I'm described as having weaponized incompetence tendencies where I do something like shit so somebody else picks up the slack. It's just not the way I was raised. Like my programming doesn't allow me to do that. But I can say showing up feels good because usually when I show up, I end up feeling the benefit of the fact that I continue to show up. It doesn't complicate anything, make any of my weights heavier, but sometimes it does feel like a burden because I am showing up continuously, but I can reference people who don't always show up. And I can't help but question myself why that is, why they find that acceptable to not show up to their duties and responsibilities. And when I think about that, of course, the person that always comes to mind, no matter what, is my dad. He will always be the trauma of my life for being the most impeccable example of everything wrong with a parent, if you ask me. It sucks to behave like nothing is wrong because obviously things are wrong, but the entire world cannot be the backyard of my negative emotions. I have to regulate them and determine the time and the place where it's okay for those to show out. And of course, the only acceptable place for those to show is at home. I can't show it when I'm driving. I cannot show them at work because it can have negative consequences and that type of thing. So at least I have selected my home to be the exclusive temple where I allow myself to like power down. My guard is down. And whatever my emotions do in this safe space that I overpay for and keeps me freaking enslaved, then I've earned it. And then finally, the independent daughter they never worry about, that's what makes me feel invisible. You never care to wonder how it is that someone who on the outside looks like they have everything together, do you ever consider what the cost is for that? What is the price for that this person pays to keep everything in order and functioning? Really? You're really that shallow? Always consider that. Like the person who is excelling somewhere, performing somewhere with excellence, there is something they're not doing. Let's pick on royalty, for instance. Queen Elizabeth and her Prince Andrew. How would they have turned out if she would have been able to be more present as a mother? I refuse to believe that they would have all turned out the way they turned out with their behavioral issues, especially Andrew and Charles, if the Queen would have been able to embrace her motherly role more closely, as opposed to just relying on like secondary people to take over. The problem that I see with the Queen is that I feel like she had the tendency of not really holding her kid accountable. Like, why would you make him the Grand Duke of whatever the fuck when he has clearly misbehaved? I would think that you would start chipping away at some of those privileges. For the average person, there are some parents who will reward a child's negative conduct because you don't want for them to suffer. And do you think that you're solving things by acting as a shield for this kid, but what you're doing is you're arresting their development? And that never turns out well. So for me, I can say that I didn't really experience that. But unfortunately, because I didn't experience that, what I did develop was the tendency of being really hard on myself. And it takes a while to break from that chain. But what matters is that I'm evaluating it, taking the time to study it, study my character, and then from there, make the proper adjustments. And I don't think this is a job that ever ends. I don't think that this time next year I'll sit here and tell you guys that I did it! I have perfectly calibrated myself to be a functional adult with no issues and that everything is getting done and my suffering is over and people around me aren't suffering and I'm achieving everything and I can be independent and be by myself and all that bullshit. Contrary to what people say, I never understand this, and I have seen this commented at me on the channel too, which is people like to say that they're born alone. You're not born alone. You come out of a woman. You come out of your mother. Unless you're like test tube lab grown, and even then you still need someone to do the sciencey shit to get you to grow and stuff. You may die alone. I believe that you do die alone. But in some cases, some people have the privilege of not dying alone. They die with company. But the people who say that you're born alone, I don't understand it. I sincerely don't get it. And if you want to complicate it a little more, if your mom went to a hospital or if she had a midwife or something, you had your mom and you had those other people surrounding you, helping with your arrival. Why would you consider that the independent person that you see that you think is independent is truly getting by independently? Did you have someone serve you in a retail store? Did you have someone serve you, say, at the bank? Did someone serve you with your vehicle needs? Did someone serve you by providing food? Like, did you grow your own food? Or did you have to go somewhere? And then in that somewhere, someone who is the supplier did that job of producing that stuff that you're gonna eat. So yeah, like when you put it like that, I understand the feeling of being emotionally and mentally alone, and how, say, on certain projects, you are by yourself. Like I can say I'm by myself on the channel, I'm by myself with my clothing stuff, and at work, I can describe the instances when I feel like I'm by myself, but I know that in literal terms, I am not alone. But it's that complexity, that nuance that needs to be reevaluated. And I think we all need to spend some time considering that. So for me, until my, like I said, emotional and mental needs are addressed, I will continue to feel like I'm alone, because I can evidence the instances and the ways in which I am alone. And because I feel alone and that activates my survival mode, I have to retreat. And when I retreat, it is hard to access me sometimes. And it's okay, but it's not okay because of the consequences that may have down the line. That's all you gotta consider. Well, you guys, that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that made sense. Again, like everything I always say here, I'm not looking to convince you. You don't need to agree. You don't need to disagree. But if you want to, go ahead. The door is always open. But I think that, to me, speaking from experience, there is no wrong in you indulging in yourself with these thoughts as long as you have a purpose defined. Dwell on yourself, but have a goal as to why. For instance, with me, when I get in this mode, is because I'm studying what it is that I need to have addressed and what are the things that I have gotten over. It's kind of like being in school. You get evaluated on your performance. I self-evaluate on my personal performance. Okay, that's it. Bye.